introduce yourself?
Oh, yes, I can introduce myself. I'm going to be talking to you, right? Not to the camera.
No, not to Mr. Ball, to me.
Okay, so my name is Véronique Bergeron, and I'm your mom. And I have a law degree from the University of Ottawa, and then I have a master's degree in law with a specialization in biomedical ethics from McGill University in Montreal. And my research topics when I was doing my master's were informed consent in pediatric care, and I also did some research project on gene screening, prenatal screening, genetic screening. So there you go. Yeah.
Very convenient. So what exactly are bioethics?
Okay, so biomedical ethics is kind of a branch of philosophy. Ethics is a branch of philosophy that studies moral reasoning. So moral reasoning would be reasoning, trying to figure out what is right, what is wrong, and why, from a philosophical standpoint. And so biomedical ethics is that branch of ethics that studies science and the advancement in science and medical research.
All right, and from a bioethical point of view, what would be the arguments for or against human embryo editing, that is?
Human embryo editing. So human embryo editing is the process whereby we sort of take an embryo in a petri dish, so that's pre-implantation. So it's an embryo that is conceived, like I said, in a petri dish outside the body. And then the genes are mapped, basically, and then they're edited as needed for whatever we're editing for. And so from a bioethical perspective, there's a whole bunch of questions that that arise from embryo editing. And so the first one come from just the science of embryo editing. Let's say we're doing some research on, I don't know, bacterias. If we make a mistake and things turn out poorly, you kill a few bacterias and you're not worse off. But with human embryo editing, how do you know that your procedure has been successful? As if you have like a fully functioning human being. Well, how do you know your procedure hasn't been successful? As if you have a human being that is sick, suffering, if it really doesn't work, right? So we're basically testing this. We're testing this new scientific process on human beings, and so there's a whole range of questions that arise from a scientific process that is not quite completely developed and we don't know if it's successful or not. So what we know from right now is that cloning, for instance, in animals hasn't resulted in long, happy, healthy lives for the animals that were cloned. And so do we really want to go down that road where we're doing this with humans? And so giving birth to people that will later live lives of suffering. And suffering is part of life. We accept it. We know it exists. But is this something we want to give someone on purpose? And also someone who hasn't consented to that. So the human beings that are being created from that, they didn't have a say, right? So then what do we do? What's next for that? So there's a whole sort of avenue of questioning that comes just from the science of genetic editing and whether it's ready, right? Mm-hmm. And whether and also, like I said, the questions of how do we test this science and is it even ethical to go down that road? Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. Yeah, you looked like you had a question.
But we know that it's not going there yet. As of right now, human embryo editing is just in the first couple days, very early, and they don't have any plans as of right now, or so they say, to evolve that into.
That's right. So, and part of bioethics is to study whether we should do something, right? So, but our history, as human beings, when we can do something, we usually do it, mm-hmm. right? So there's part of bioethics that reflects on should we go down this road? But the thing is, because the technology is available, you may not want to go down this road. Your hospital or you're a scientific or you're a lab may not want to go down this road, but if the technology is available, somebody's gonna, right? And so with any new technology, there's also the potential that it's going to be misused, and there's a whole so now the embryo gene editing, we haven't really like implanted those embryos yet, so another avenue of questioning has to do with the value of the human embryo. So now we're doing tests and experiments on human embryos. It's not new, but we can still wonder whether this is ethical, right, or not. So if you're someone, so some people hold that human life has dignity and value from the moment of conception. And so as soon as we start experimenting on embryos, we are experimenting on human beings. They might not be persons as far as the law is concerned. They might not have legal standing, but from a moral and ethical perspective, they have value, they have dignity. And so now we're experimenting on these human beings. In Canada, a human being is not considered a person that has a legal standing until it's born viable, alive and viable. That's the cutoff. And so as per Canadian law, you could experiment on an embryo right through the pregnancy and up until the day before it's born. And that would be legal, but bioethics is more than what's legal. We're wondering, should we actually do this? And so when we start gene editing and making experiments on embryos, as we already do, by the way, it's not just gene editing, we can question whether we're devaluing human life and we're commodifying human life. We're taking an embryo, we're making it our plaything or our test, our test thing without any. And the thing is, because when the tests don't work, if the test fails, if the experimentation doesn't work, we throw them out, right? So we create human beings that are conceived, we conceive human beings, and yes, they're in the very early stage, but morally speaking, you either believe that human life has dignity from the moment of birth, or you don't, right? And so I'm talking for the people who do. They consider that this avenue of testing is unethical and immoral. Other people would say, no, it's not, because we can achieve a greater good for future generations. And so they think that the value of the human being, we can negotiate
it's
that.
Worth it.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a whole range of what people believe in that, but there's talking about the bioethics of gene editing, that's a whole other avenue of questioning whether we should even be doing experimentation on human embryos that we discard, right? With no intention of implanting them, and then if you intend to implant them, you come back to my questions at the beginning, whether those lives are worth living and whether
what happens if it goes wrong.
If it goes wrong,
what are the legal implications?
That's right.
Who's responsible? That's
right. So that's another avenue. And then there's the avenue of like, we're editing for what, right? We're editing for what? So there's a lot of scientific advancements that were once thought through for like the betterment of human life everywhere. For instance, we're all familiar with GMOs, right? And so the idea was like, we're going to create like a type of wheat that's going to grow in the desert, and then we're going to solve hunger in Africa, right? And everybody's on board. Yay, GMO, we're going to solve the problem of hunger in the world. The world hunger is gone, right? And what do we use GMOs for? We're using it to make apples that don't rot, and, so us in North America can buy nice apples that are always perfectly round and don't rot, because we don't want to eat apples that have like little dents in them, right? Well, this is what GMOs used for. Why? Because we have the money. Africa doesn't, right? Oh, yeah, there's still people trying to solve the problem of world hunger, but where the money is in creating tomatoes and apples and corn that we can sell more of for more, for more money, maximize profit lines, for the people like you and I that can afford to buy them. So any new technology starts with like this great, like with somebody with a great idea, and it's like, we're going to solve the problem of Huntington's disease. And then it ends up being someone gene editing for blue eyes and there's certain features, and because they're the people who have the money to do it. So you can take this analogy to all sorts of scientific advancements and realize that in the end, the people who have the money are the people who dictate the agenda of what we're doing with this technology. So with human gene editing, there's always the risk that we're going to solve this or that illness and there will be no more X, and then we end up giving people that kind of say into what we're editing for. Well, is that a problem? Well, it depends what you're editing for. So if I say, well, we're going to allow people to edit for, I don't know, like maybe someone is going to say, I don't want a gay kid. Can you edit for that? Right? And then some people are going to say, well, this is wrong. Like we should be able to gene edit for illnesses, but not for things like that. Well, what if, like I said, for every technology, some people are going to use it for good, some people are going to use it for evil. If the technology exists, the technology, the science, it is neutral. It's how we use it, right? If we make that technology available, history has proven that we will use it for good and we will use it for evil. This is human nature. This is what we do. So now we're going to be ending up editing for things that, for character traits, for like I said, sexual orientation, for certain features. Maybe we're going to edit females. I don't know how that would work. Eventually, you still have to keep one female at least. But
we need us, trust me.
But you know what I mean? Like, would you allow families who can afford it to edit for male or female, or for
just like make your own baby, design your own kid?
That's right. And so we're not there yet, but this is where we're going with that research, right? So is it good to ask ourselves right now, like, do we want to go down that road? Like, so this is what bioethics does. It tries to make sense out of these things. And the answer is usually, yes, we're going down that road. Like, we're doing it because we're humans, and that's what we do. But bioethics sometimes tries to slow down the train or to make people aware of the pitfalls and all that.
Yeah. And finally, how much do you think bioethics will like play a part in if this will become?
Okay, so this is like the cynical me talking to you right now. Nobody wants to pay for bioethics, right? People want money for scientific advancements. They don't really want to pay academics to think about these things. So bioethics still now is in the realm of universities, philosophy departments, that kind of stuff. And sometimes they'll have like a news item and then people will come and talk about bioethics. Let's say there's a new advancement, they'll have a talking head come and do a presentation on the news or whatever. But I think it's always important to have people in society asking those questions, right? And so because we need to think about them. I mean, it's not like we don't have a history of Holocaust and genocide. The history of humanity has many examples of one kind of people trying to wipe out another kind of people. So we used to do it with gas chamber or with machetes, or we did it all sorts of ways throughout history. And so the bioethicians, the historians, all the social sciences are the people who are there to hold everybody else to account in a way and show them history. Does it mean that they're always listened to? No. Does it mean that we shouldn't have these voices talking? No, right? We should still have people ringing the alarm bell and trying to slow things down and get people to think before they go down this kind of super highway of progress or whatever, right? So what's the future for bioethics? I don't know. Like, it will always it always depends on whether people are willing to listen and whether people in this economy and the world we live in right now, whether people are willing to pay for it. Hospitals, labs, And there are, there's some, like in Montreal where I studied, hospitals have ethics consultants, pharmaceuticals have ethics boards. There's all sorts of people thinking about these things. In Ottawa, not so much, right? So it's still very much a field that is growing and trying to find its place in the greater scientific community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.